The Occupy Wall Street protests are making headlines again after police in Oakland, California clashed with protesters across that city. Authorities cleared protesters from their encampment earlier in the day. The confrontations last night saw police fire tear gas on at least 3 separate occasions in their attempts to calm down the crowds. In Atlanta, meanwhile, police cleared Woodruff Park of Occupy Wall Street protesters earlier this morning, and they arrested 50 people. Atlanta's Mayor Kasim Reed cited security concerns after a man with an assault rifle was spotted among the protesters on Tuesday. Let's bring in E.J. Dionne. He's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution and also a columnist for the Washington Post and an MSNBC contributor. E.J., it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you.
Well, let's put up a poll, because the latest poll, I think it's from the New York Times, shows that the support for the Occupy Wall Street movement is growing, and 43% saying they do approve of the protests. And yet it seems like on both sides of the political spectrum, there's a little bit of what do we make of it, what they should do about it. Let's start with the Republicans. I know you've observed that it seems like Republicans can't make up their minds whether they think these protests are a bad thing or whether they want to align themselves at least with the broader sentiments.
Right. Well, the Republicans have had a kind of whiplash on this. Within a few days, Eric Cantor, the Republican leader in the House, seemed to be on one side of them and then on the other side of them. What the Republicans would like to do is write them all off as a bunch of 60s left-wing hippies or something like that. And you see that in some of the conservative commentary. But they know that on a lot of the basic issues, like were there serious abuses on Wall Street? Should millionaires pay more in taxes? Are we in this mess because of financial shenanigans? The public is with these protesters. So the Republicans would like to turn it into a general protest against the status quo and thus against Obama. But I think they know that this hurts them more than it hurts the Democrats, because the conservatives want to argue all our problems stem from Washington. These folks are saying, wait a minute, a lot of these problems came right out of Wall Street and the financial system.
At the same time, it seems like the president and Democrats are also being careful here. I mean, in terms of some of the things that the protesters talk about, you would think they'd be more naturally aligned with Democrats, but it's not clear whether the president is going to try to exploit that energy, seize on that energy, or if he's concerned that maybe it could backfire.
Well, I think they're not exactly sure, the Democrats, where this goes. And that picture you showed just before our segment of that tear gas, some Democrats are worried what will happen with these demonstrations. Now, the fact is, if you look around the country, these demonstrators have been very disciplined on the whole. They've been very focused, and I think they do have a sense about what a big role they're playing nationally. And you've also had the unions start coming in support of these demonstrations, so that I think what you're going to see is Democrats getting sort of cautiously closer to them. But in a lot of ways, it's like protesters in the past. You had the labor movement that was both to the left of Franklin Roosevelt but supported him. You had the civil rights movement that was pushing Lyndon Johnson but supported him when it mattered. I think you're going to have that same kind of push and support relationship here with inside Wall Street. That certainly is what Democrats hope.
Well, it's kind of interesting because you cite those 2 examples, and you could also cite the Tea Party. I mean, in all of those prior cases, you could kind of come up with a one-liner. You knew what the protests ultimately were looking for. In the case of the Tea Party, they want to cut government spending. In terms of the civil rights movement, you know what they wanted to do there. I mean, do you still feel that there's a sense that you know that the Occupy Wall Street protesters are expressing a lot of anger, but you don't know exactly what the ask is?
Right. Well, first of all, I think it's easier to say cut taxes and cut government than get the financial system under control, which is something more complicated to do. But I do think there are some unifying themes if you look at some of the wonderful signs they have. And one of them is we need to regulate these guys, not deregulate. And the other is the top 1% have done a whole lot better than 99% of us. A lot of people have suggested they rename their movement as the 99%. And I think that aspect of their message speaks both to reality when you look at what's happened to wages and incomes and the feelings of a whole lot of people.
All right, E.J. Dionne from the Washington Post and an MSNBC contributor. It's good to talk to you today. E.J., thank you.
Good to be with you.